Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.
And now chapter 13, the stealing of the boys and calves by Brahmā. Shukdeva Goswami was very much encouraged when Maharaj Parikshit asked him why the cowherd boys did not discuss the death of Aghasura until after 1 year had passed. He explained thus, "My dear king, you are making the subject matter of the transcendental pastimes of Krishna fresher by your inquisitiveness. It is said that it is the nature of a devotee to constantly apply his mind, energy, words, ears, etc., in hearing and chanting about Krishna. This is called Krishna consciousness. And for one who is wrapped in hearing and chanting Krishna, the subject matter never becomes hackneyed or old. That is the significance of transcendental subject matter, in contrast to material subject matter. Material subject matter becomes stale, and one cannot hear a certain subject for a long time. He wants change. But as far as transcendental subject matter is concerned, it is called Nitya Nava Nava Yamana. This means that one can go on chanting and hearing about the Lord and never feel tired, but remain fresh and eager to hear more and more. It is the duty of the spiritual master to disclose all confidential subject matter to the inquisitive and sincere disciple." Thus, Shukdeva Goswami began to explain why the killing of Aghasura was not discussed until 1 year had passed. Shukdeva Goswami told the king, "Now hear of this secret with attention. After saving his friends from the mouth of Aghasura, and after killing the demon, Lord Krishna brought his friends to the bank of Yamuna and addressed them as follows. My dear friends, just see how this spot is very nice for taking lunch and playing on the soft, sandy Yamuna bank. You can see how the lotus flowers in the water are beautifully blown, and how they distribute their flavor all around. The chirping of the birds, along with cooing of the peacocks, surrounded by the whispering of the leaves in the trees, combine and present sound vibrations that echo to one another. And this just enriches the beautiful scenery created by the trees here. Let us have our lunch in this spot, because it is already late and we are feeling hungry. Let the calves remain near us, and let them drink water from the Yamuna. While we engage in our lunch-taking, the calves may engage in eating the soft grasses that are in this spot." On hearing this proposal from Krishna, all the boys became very glad and said, "Certainly, let us all sit down here to take our lunch." They then let loose the calves to eat the soft grass. Sitting down on the ground and keeping Krishna in the center, they began to open their different boxes brought from home. Lord Sri Krishna was seated in the center of the circle, and all the boys kept their faces toward him. They ate and constantly enjoyed seeing the Lord face to face. Krishna appeared to be the whirl of a lotus flower, and the boys surrounding him appeared to be its different petals. The boys collected flowers, leaves of flowers, and the bark of trees, and placed them under their different boxes. And thus they began to eat their lunch, keeping company with Krishna. While taking lunch, each boy began to manifest different kinds of relations with Krishna, and they enjoyed each other's company with joking words. While Lord Krishna was thus enjoying lunch with his friends, his flute was pushed within the belt of his cloth, and his bugle and cane were pushed in on the left-hand side of his cloth. He was holding a lump of foodstuff, prepared with yogurt, butter, rice, and pieces of fruit salad in his left palm, which could be seen through his petal-like finger joints. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who accepts the results of all great sacrifices, was laughing and joking, enjoying lunch with his friends in Vrindavan. And thus the scene was being observed by the demigods from heaven. As for the boys, they were simply enjoying transcendental bliss in the company of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At that time, the calves that were pasturing nearby entered into the deep forest, allured by new grasses, and gradually went out of sight. When the boys saw that the calves were not nearby, they became afraid for their safety, and they immediately cried out, "Krishna!" Krishna is the killer of fear personified. Everyone is afraid of fear personified, but fear personified is afraid of Krishna. By crying out the word Krishna, the boys at once transcended the fearful situation. Out of his great affection, Krishna did not want his friends to give up their pleasing lunch engagement and go searching for the calves. He therefore said, "My dear friends, you need not interrupt your lunch. Go on enjoying. I am going personally where the calves are." Thus, Lord Krishna immediately started to search out the calves in the caves and bushes. He searched in the mountain holes and in the forests, but nowhere could he find them. At the time when Aghasura was killed, and the demigods were looking on the incident with great surprise, Brahmā, who was born of the lotus flower, growing out of the navel of Vishnu, also came to see. He was surprised how a little boy like Krishna could act so wonderfully. Although he was informed that the little cowherd boy was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he wanted to see more glorified pastimes of the Lord. And thus he stole all the calves and cowherd boys and took them to a different place. Lord Krishna, therefore, in spite of searching for the calves, could not find them, and he even lost his boyfriends on the bank of the Yamuna where they had been taking their lunch. In the form of a cowherd boy, Lord Krishna was very little in comparison to Brahmā, but because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he could immediately understand that all the calves and boys had been stolen by Brahmā. Krishna thought, "Brahmā has taken away all the boys and calves. How can I alone return to Vrindavan? The mothers will be aggrieved." Therefore, in order to satisfy the mothers of his friends, as well as to convince Brahmā of the supremacy of the personality of Godhead, he immediately expanded himself as the cowherd boys and calves. In the Vedas it is said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead expands himself into so many living entities by his energy. Therefore, it was not very difficult for him to expand himself again into so many boys and calves. He expanded himself to become exactly like the boys, who were of all different features, facial and bodily construction, and who are different in their clothing and ornaments, and in their behavior and personal activities. In other words, everyone has different tastes. Being an individual soul, each person has entirely different activities and behavior. Yet Krishna exactly expanded himself into all the different positions of the individual boys. He also became the calves, who were also of different sizes, colors, activities, etc. This was possible because everything is an expansion of Krishna's energy. In the Vishnu Purana it is said, "Parasya Brahmana Shakti." Whatever we actually see in the cosmic manifestation, be it matter or the activities of the living entities, is simply an expansion of the energies of the Lord, as heat and light are the different expansions of fire. thus expanding himself as the boys and calves in their individual capacities, and surrounded by such expansions of himself, Krishna entered the village of Vrindavan. The residents had no knowledge of what had happened. After entering the village, Vrindavan, all the calves entered their respective cowsheds, and the boys also went to their respective mothers and homes. The mothers of the boys heard the vibration of their flutes before their entrance, and to receive them, they came out of their homes and embraced them. And out of maternal affection, milk was flowing from their breasts, and they allowed the boys to drink it. However, their offering was not exactly to their boys, but to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who had expanded himself into such boys. This was another chance for all the mothers of Vrindavan to feed the Supreme Personality of Godhead with their own milk. Therefore, not only did Lord Krishna give Yashoda the chance to feed him, but this time he gave the chance to all the elderly gopis. All the boys began to deal with their mothers as usual. And the mothers also, on the approach of evening, began to bathe their respective children, decorate them with tilak and ornaments, and give them necessary food after the day's labor. The cows also, who were away in the pasturing ground, returned in the evening and began to call the respective calves. The calves immediately came to their mothers, and the mothers began to lick the bodies of the calves. These relations between the cows and the gopis, with their calves and boys, remained unchanged, although actually the original calves and boys were not there. Actually, the cows' affection for their calves and the elderly gopis' affection for the boys causelessly increased. Their affection increased naturally, even though the calves and boys were not their offspring. Although the cows and elderly gopis of Vrindavan had greater affection for Krishna than for their own offspring, after this incident, their affection for their offspring increased exactly as it did for Krishna. For 1 year continually, Krishna himself expanded as the calves and cowherd boys, and was present in the pasturing ground. As it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's expansion is situated in everyone's heart as the Supersoul. Similarly, instead of expanding himself as the Supersoul, he expanded himself as a portion of calves and cowherd boys for 1 continuous year. One day, when Krishna, along with Balaram, was maintaining the calves in the forest, they saw some cows grazing on the top of Govardhan Hill. The cows could see down into the valley where the calves were being taken care of by the boys. Suddenly, on sighting their calves, the cows began to run towards them. They leaped downhill with joined front and rear legs. The cows were so melted with affection for their calves that they did not care about the rough path from the top of Govardhan Hill down to the pasturing ground. They began to approach the calves with their milk bags full of milk, and they raised their tails upwards. When they were coming down the hill, their milk bags were pouring milk on the ground out of intense maternal affection for the calves, although they were not their own calves. These cows had their own calves, and the calves that were grazing beneath Govardhan Hill were larger. They were not expected to drink milk directly from the milk bag, but were satisfied with the grass. Yet, all the cows came immediately and began to lick their bodies, and the calves also began to suck milk from the milk bags. There appeared to be a great bondage of affection between the cows and calves. When the cows were running down from the top of Govardhan Hill, the men who were taking care of them tried to stop them. Elderly cows are taken care of by the men, and the calves are taken care of by the boys. And as far as possible, the calves are kept separate from the cows, so that the calves do not drink all the available milk. Therefore, the men who were taking care of the cows on the top of Govardhan Hill tried to stop them, but they failed. Baffled by their failure, they were feeling ashamed and angry. They were very unhappy. But when they came down and saw their children taking care of the calves, they all of a sudden became very affectionate toward the children. It was very astonishing. Although the men came down disappointed, baffled, and angry, as soon as they saw their own children, their hearts melted with great affection. At once their anger, dissatisfaction, and unhappiness disappeared. They began to show paternal love for the children, and with great affection they lifted them in their arms and embraced them. They began to smell their children's heads and enjoy their company with great happiness. After embracing their children, the men again took the cows back to the top of Govardhan Hill. Along the way, they began to think of their children, and affectionate tears fell from their eyes. When Balaram saw this extraordinary exchange of affection between the cows and their calves, and between the fathers and their children, when neither the calves nor the children needed so much care, he began to wonder why this extraordinary thing happened. He was astonished to see all the residents of Vrindavan so affectionate for their own children, exactly as they had been for Krishna. Similarly, the cows had grown affectionate for their calves as much as for Krishna. Balaram therefore concluded that the extraordinary show of affection was something mystical, either performed by the demigods or by some powerful man. Otherwise, how could this wonderful change take place? He concluded that this mystical change must have been caused by Krishna, whom Balaram considered his worshipable personality of Godhead. He thought, it was arranged by Krishna, and even I could not check its mystic power. Thus Balaram understood that all those boys and calves were only expansions of Krishna. Balaram inquired from Krishna about the actual situation. He said, "My dear Krishna, in the beginning, I thought that all these cows, calves, and cowherd boys were either great sages and saintly persons or demigods. But at present, it appears that they are actually your expansions. They are all you. You yourself are playing as the calves and cows and boys. What is the mystery of this situation? Where have those other calves and cows and boys gone? And why are you expanding yourself as the cows, calves, and boys? Will you kindly tell me what is the cause?" At the request of Balaram, Krishna briefly explained the whole situation, how the calves and boys were stolen by Brahmā, and how he, Krishna, was concealing the incident by expanding himself, so people would not know that the original cows, calves, and boys were missing. While Krishna and Balaram were talking, Brahmā returned after a moment's interval according to the duration of his life. We have information of Lord Brahma's duration of life from the Bhagavad Gita. 1,000 times the duration of the 4 ages, or 4,300,000 times 1,000 years, comprise Brahma's 12 hours. Similarly, 1 moment of Brahma is equal to 1 year of our solar calculation. After one moment of Brahma's calculation, Brahma came back to see the fun caused by his stealing the boys and calves. But he was also afraid that he was playing with fire. Krishna was his master, and he had played mischief for fun by taking away his calves and boys. He was really anxious, so he did not stay away very long. He came back after a moment of his calculation. He saw that all the boys, calves, and cows were playing with Krishna in the same way as when he had come upon them, although he was confident that he had taken them and made them lie down asleep under the spell of his mystic power. Brahma began to think, all the boys, calves, and cows were taken away by me, and I know they are still sleeping. How is it that a similar batch of cows, boys, and calves is playing with Krishna? Is it that they are not influenced by my mystic power? Have they been playing continually for 1 year with Krishna? Brahma tried to understand who they were and how they were uninfluenced by his mystic power, but he could not ascertain it. In other words, he himself came under the spell of his own mystic power. The influence of his mystic power appeared like snow in darkness, or the glowworm in daytime. During the night's darkness, the glowworm can show some glittering power, and the snow piled up on the top of a hill or on the ground can shine during the daytime. But at night, the snow has no silver glitter, nor does the glowworm have any illuminating power during the daytime. Similarly, when the small mystic power exhibited by Brahma was before the mystic power of Krishna, it was just like snow or the glowworm. When a man of small mystic power wants to show potency in the presence of greater mystic power, he diminishes his own influence. He does not increase it. Even such a great personality as Brahma, when he wanted to show his mystic power before Krishna, became ludicrous. Brahma was thus confused about his own mystic power. In order to convince Brahma that all those cows, calves, and boys were not the original ones, the cows, calves, and boys who were playing with Krishna transformed into Vishnu forms. Actually, the original ones were sleeping under the spell of Brahma's mystic power. But the present ones, seen by Brahma, were all immediate expansions of Krishna or Vishnu. Vishnu is the expansion of Krishna, so the Vishnu forms appeared before Brahma. All the Vishnu forms were of bluish color and dressed in yellow garments. All of them had 4 hands decorated with club, disc, lotus flower, and conch shell. On their heads were glittering golden jeweled helmets. They were bedecked with pearls and earrings and garlanded with beautiful flowers. On their chests was the mark of Srivatsa. Their arms were decorated with armlets and other jewelry. Their necks were smooth, just like a conch shell. Their legs were decorated with bells. Their waists decorated with golden belts, and their fingers decorated with jeweled rings. Brahma also saw that upon the whole body of Lord Vishnu, fresh tulsi buds were thrown, beginning from his lotus feet up to the top of his head. Another significant feature of the Vishnu forms was that all of them were looking transcendently beautiful. Their smiling resembled the moonshine, and their glancing resembled the early rising of the sun. Just by their glancing, they appeared as the creators and maintainers of the modes of ignorance and passion. Vishnu represents the mode of goodness, Brahma represents the mode of passion, and Lord Shiva represents the mode of ignorance. Therefore, as maintainer of everything in the cosmic manifestation, Vishnu is also creator and maintainer of Brahma and Lord Shiva. After this manifestation of Lord Vishnu, Brahma saw that many other Brahmas and Shivas and demigods and even insignificant living entities, down to the ants and very small straws, movable and immovable living entities, were dancing, surrounding Lord Vishnu. Their dancing was accompanied by various kinds of music, and all of them were worshipping Lord Vishnu. Brahma realized that all those Vishnu forms were complete, beginning from the anima perfection of becoming small like an atom up to becoming infinite like the cosmic manifestation. All the mystic powers of Brahma, Shiva, all the demigods, and the 24 elements of cosmic manifestation were fully represented in the person of Vishnu. By the influence of Lord Vishnu, all subordinate mystic powers were engaged in his worship. He was being worshipped by time, space, cosmic manifestation, reformation, desire, activity, and the three qualities of material nature. Lord Vishnu, Brahma also realized, is the reservoir of all truth, knowledge, and bliss. He is the combination of three transcendental features, namely eternity, knowledge, and bliss. And he is the object of worship by the followers of the Upanishads. Brahma realized that all the different forms of cows, boys, and calves transformed into Vishnu forms were not transformed by a mysticism of the type that a yogi or a demigod can display by specific powers invested in him. The cows, calves, and boys transformed into Vishnu murtis or Vishnu forms were not displays of Vishnu Maya or Vishnu energy, but were Vishnu himself. The respective qualifications of Vishnu and Vishnu Maya are just like fire and heat. In the heat, there is the qualification of fire, namely warmth. And yet heat is not fire. The manifestation of the Vishnu forms of the boys, cows, and calves was not like the heat, but rather the fire. They were all actually Vishnu. Factually, the qualification of Vishnu is full truth, full knowledge, and full bliss. Another example can be given with material objects, which are reflected in many, many forms. For example, the sun is reflected in many water pots, but the reflections of the sun in many pots are not actually the sun. There is no actual heat and light from the sun in the pot, although it appears as the sun. But the forms which Krishna assumed were each and every one full Vishnu. Satya means truth, Jnana means full knowledge, and Ananda means full bliss. Transcendental forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in His person are so great that the impersonal followers of the Upanishads cannot reach the platform of knowledge to understand them. Particularly, the transcendental forms of the Lord are beyond the reach of the impersonalists, who can only understand through the studies of the Upanishads that the absolute truth is not matter, and the absolute truth is not materially restricted by limited potency. Lord Brahma understood Krishna and his expansion into Vishnu forms, and could understand that due to the expansion of energy of the Supreme Lord, everything movable and immovable within the cosmic manifestation is existing. When Brahma was thus standing baffled in his limited power, and conscious of his limited activities within the 11 senses, he could at least realize that he was also a creation of the material energy, just like a puppet. As a puppet has no independent power to dance, but dances according to the direction of the puppet master, so the demigods and living entities are all subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As it is stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the only master is Krishna, and all others are servants. The whole world is under the waves of the material spell, and beings are floating like straws in water. So their struggle for existence is continuing. But as soon as one becomes conscious that he is the eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this Maya, or illusory struggle for existence, is immediately stopped. Lord Brahmā, who has full control over the goddess of learning, and who is considered to be the best authority in Vedic knowledge, was thus perplexed, being unable to understand the extraordinary power manifested in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the mundane world, even a personality like Brahmā is unable to understand the potential mystic power of the Supreme Lord. Not only did Brahmā fail to understand, but he was perplexed even to see the display which was being manifested by Krishna before him. Krishna took compassion upon Brahma's inability to see even how he was displaying the force of Vishnu in transferring himself into cows and cowherd boys, and thus, while fully manifesting the Vishnu expansion, he suddenly pulled his curtain of Yogamaya over the scene. In the Bhagavad Gita it is said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not visible due to the curtain spread by Yogamaya. That which covers the reality is Mahamaya, or the external energy, which does not allow a conditioned soul to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead beyond the cosmic manifestation. But the energy which partially manifests the Supreme Personality of Godhead and partially does not allow one to see is called Yogamaya. Brahmā is not an ordinary conditioned soul. He is far, far superior to all the demigods, and yet he could not comprehend the display of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, Krishna willingly stopped manifesting any further potency. The conditioned soul not only becomes bewildered, but is completely unable to understand. The curtain of Yogamaya was drawn, so that Brahmā would not become more and more perplexed. When Brahmā was relieved from his perplexity, he appeared to be awakened from an almost dead state, and he began to open his eyes with great difficulty. Thus he could see the eternal cosmic manifestation with common eyes. He saw all around him the super excellent view of Vrindavan, full with trees, which is the source of life for all living entities. He could appreciate the transcendental land of Vrindavan, where all the living entities are transcendental to ordinary nature. In the forest of Vrindavan, even ferocious animals, like tigers and others, live peacefully along with the deer and human beings. He could understand that because of the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Vrindavan, that place is transcendental to all other places, and that there is no lust and greed there. Brahmā thus found Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, playing the part of a small cowherd boy. He saw that little child with a lump of food in his left hand, searching out his friends, cows and calves, just as he was actually doing 1 year before, after their disappearance. Immediately, Brahmā descended from his great swan carrier and fell down before the Lord, just like a golden stick. The word used among the Vaishnavas for offering respect is dandavat. This word means falling down like a stick. One should offer respect to the superior Vaishnava by falling down straight with his body just like a stick. So Brahmā fell down before the Lord just like a stick to offer respect. And because the complexion of Brahmā is golden, he appeared to be like a golden stick lying down before Lord Krishna. All the 4 helmets on the heads of Brahmā touched the lotus feet of Krishna. Brahmā, being very joyful, began to shed tears, and he washed the lotus feet of Krishna with his tears. Repeatedly, he fell and rose, and he recalled the wonderful activities of the Lord. After repeating obeisances for a long time, Brahmā stood up and smeared his hands over his eyes. Seeing the Lord before him, he, trembling, began to offer prayers with great respect, humility, and attention. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 13th chapter of Krishna, the stealing of the boys and calves by Brahmā.